In this video, we're going to look at the difference between a project and a package. And this comes up over and over again when you're working with IIB, and really anytime you're working in Eclipse, because when you're working with Java, you're going to be creating packages. And when you're working inside Eclipse, you're going to be creating tons of projects. Now, the simple way to think about this is the way it's described here. So if you are in Eclipse and you're not working with Java, then what you're going to be creating is essentially these kind of projects. And if you are working in Eclipse or not, but you're working with packages, you're going to be working with Java. The thing is really that the idea of a package and a project comes down to the way that Java and the way that Eclipse handles files and directories on your computer. So you're familiar, obviously, with directories, and you're familiar with files. And in the case of an operating system, you know, we're familiar with this. We know how that works. So what's happening here in projects and packages is that there's a kind of an abstraction. It's a way that Java and Eclipse maps these files and these directories into a logical layer. So that's really essentially what these things are. They're just a logical representation of project. Now, in practical terms, what that means is that if you have a project here, so that means we're working in Eclipse and Eclipse-based products, which includes the toolkit, right? Because IIB toolkit is written in or uses Java. So that's why it applies here. So if you have if this file here is related to a kind of project, and we're going to see soon that one of the kinds of projects that you get inside Eclipse IIB is called a library. If you have a library, the library is essentially this project is going to be a library. So in other words, this directory, essentially, that's going to be a library. And these files that are in here, that are here, are going to be related to things that you do with libraries. So that's kind of the idea. It's just projects and packages have to do with purpose. What are you going to do with the files and the folders that you have? Another way to look at that is let's look at the example when you're not working with a project here, but with Java. In that case, you know that you're working, so in other words, we're working with a package here. The way to think about this is that if your file is Java, then it's going to go in here. And specifically, and we're going to see this soon, if you're going to do that, if you're going to put some file into a package, and then more formally, this is actually called a Java package. If you're going to do that, very often, in fact, most cases, if not all cases, this whole package here is going to be contained inside of a project which is called a Java project. So it holds Java content. So this is kind of the point, is that you're seeing projects hold packages, and you're starting to see a hierarchy. And that's exactly what we're going to look at in just a second. But the whole point here is that in Eclipse, you only have projects and you only have packages, essentially. And of course, you have files and you have folders. And the question is, okay, well, if you're going to how are you going to consider those files and folders? They're either going to be projects, or they're going to be located inside projects. They're going to be located inside packages. And the type, these are logical types. These logical types matter because you can only put certain files and certain folders into certain projects and certain packages. The question is, what is the purpose that you're going to use those files and folders for? And then lastly, you'll know that you'll notice down here we have com.sun.eng, and essentially this is sometimes referred to as the namespace. This is actually a Java thing. This is really not so much an IIB thing. But what this means is that if you have tons and tons of software in your in some sort of solution that you've got created, the world of Java will put will name the classes, because Java runs on classes. They'll put the class here at the end. So the classes, you can think of it as the actual code. The thing that matters the most in whatever you're doing is the code, and that is going to go here at the end. This is the class. So you might have a class called class, AB, whatever it is, ABC. And notice that these are lowercase, 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 until you get to the class. And it's this portion here that is the package itself. And it's the class ABC that goes right here. And in case you've never seen this before, when you write Java code, say you write some my file, it's going to be written with a .java at the end. But you can't do anything with this. You can't run this at all. Even though the code may be perfect, you can't run anything. So what you do is you compile it. So if you're on Windows, it would be java.exe, and you can compile it. And sorry, it's JavaC to compile it. And then what happens is a new file is going to be created, and it's going to be called myfile.class. And that is right here. And in fact, when you run the final program, you're going to say something like java.exe, and you're not going to do myfile.java. You're simply going to drop the .java and just say java.exe, myfile. And that will run your class. So let's take a look at this. Go to some sort of application that you've written, for example here, and if I try to right click on flows, there's nothing here. Let's go down to Java, and I click on here. If I go down, here we go, properties. Look what the type says. It is a project. Now if I were to open up that project and then and this little arrow says it's a reference to another location. But anyway, let's go into our package, right? This is the structure for a package. Right click on our file here, the Java file, and look at this. It says it's a file, and sure enough, it's a Java source file. So this is starting to show us the connection between the OS operating system, so we know that's a file, and the logical representation, right? If I right click this and I see that it's a file, then that's very clear. But if I go to flows and I right click on that, I can't click on properties because this is a logical object. It's logically separating things out. It doesn't have a one-to-one correspondence with something on the operating system. And really, this one here, properties, does. So here's a file. And you can carry this out through these other pieces here. So if I go down to mylib, you would get similar results. If you get down to other resources, you can't right click on that. If I go down here, customer Java, same sort of deal. You see that it's a project. Now, what's happening here is that if you want to see all of the files on the operating system, you can't do that in the Applications tab. Instead, you're going to need to go to View, Show View, and then go down to something called the Navigator. And you'd have to click on Other to get that and just type it in. I've already loaded mine, and here's where you can see the actual structure as the file system sees it. So you can go down to Properties here and see that is actually a folder. It's not a project. If I click on this, however, and I go to Properties, it is a project. So this has no correspondence specifically to the operating system, but these do. That's a folder file, and so on down the line. And not only that, you can see that there are other pieces. We have a descriptor, an XML file. Here's the class I was talking about. Here's the .java. Here's the .class path. You can open these files as a .project, and you see that if you want to get the actual file system, you need to go to the Navigator. And then separately, there's a view, also through Window, Show, View, and then you can go to Other and type this Package Explorer. And then here too, you get essentially the same view. It's kind of a mix between Application and Navigator. But once you're in here, you can do things. For example, if you go down to Java and you try to say open up some sort of Java file. Or just a jar file, you get this option here for build path, and you don't get that on the Navigator tab or on the Application tab. So you can do some things. It depends on which tab you're in, essentially, to kind of track back. Are we dealing with files or folders, and where are they specifically? If you want the most information, go to the navigator.